It's on. Okay, greetings, everybody, and welcome to June 7th, 2002, the Accessibility Advisory Committee meeting. I hereby call the meeting to order. First, I would like. Oh, we picked up a tune. First, I would like to acknowledge that we are on Micmac and territorial land, traditional territorial land of the Micmac people. I'd like to move on and record that Gail, our counselor, is absent today. We wish him all the best. He did say that he's attending another meeting, so he's busy. Declaration of conflict of interest. If, once again, as we've said before, if there's any conflict of interest with any item listed on the agenda or any item that might come up, please notify myself at that time and we will talk further about what or whether or not you can vote. Approval of the agenda as it is stated. If you all received a copy of the agenda, please take 30 seconds to look over it. Is there anything that needs to be removed from the agenda or anything that's missing? No. Then I hereby ask for a vote to approve the agenda as it stands. Don't everybody jump at once. Tracy, I'm assuming you're one. You put your camera back on.
Yeah.
Derek is, or Tanya is both seconding it. Okay, did everybody receive a copy of the minutes of the last meeting? The last meeting that we had, we did skip May because of health reasons. I did send a letter out that was quite detailed. I hope everybody got that. Did everybody get, hi, Peter. Welcome. I hope everybody got a copy of the email that I sent out, as well as the minutes of the last meeting, which was held back in April. I was just telling Peter that May's meeting didn't happen because there was a lot of sickness throughout. Were there any questions or concerns brought up either by my email or the minutes from the last meeting?
No, because I didn't get a good chance to look at your email.
Okay, I can make sure
you why it was canceled. I just didn't read otherwise.
Okay, yeah, it was canceled because of sickness. Both Sherry and I were both sick. It wouldn't have been a quorum. Okay, if anybody didn't get the minutes of the last meeting or didn't get my email, I can either mail it out to you or I can send an email address, send it to your email address again. Just let Sherry know and we'll make sure you get a copy of it. But moving on, I'd like to ask for someone to approve the minutes of the last meeting as they stand.
I'll make that motion.
Okay, can I have a second?
I can second that for you.
That's Tonya. Moving on, public input. We don't have anything scheduled for today. You'll see as I'm about to go into, so therefore I'm just going to go directly into the chair's report. I was going to put this up on the screen. I will email it to you after. But apparently, little did I know that Teams does not do its own program, Microsoft Word, but will do, what am I looking for? Presentation slides. I didn't put it in presentation slides. I put it in Word. Anyway, moving on Saturday, May the 28th, Peter, Natalie, myself, and a bunch of others met with Peach. It was that we have previously had back in April. They were talking to us, their adult housing program. They were really interesting. Throughout the meeting, we looked through what people would call hotspots through Yarmouth that pose accessibility issues. We looked at a total of 60 to 70 different areas that could potentially cause problems to persons with accessibilities, not just in a physical sense like doorways and sidewalks, but in program sense, in how far does someone have to go and seek medical treatment. So I say it was very interesting. One of the items, they put out several items that are really good, but one of the items I found very interesting, and I don't know about Peter and Natalie, but it really made me think about, if you think about where you are, where you're sitting right now, where could you walk, in what facilities are available for you in 15-minute walk, just walking normal pace? Is there a grocery store? Is there a pharmacy? Is there a doctor? And that's kind of the areas that we looked at, and it was interesting. As I said, I'm going to send you out this email, and that will have more on it. On May 26th and 27th, there was a 2-day virtual seminar held by the Canadian Congress of Disability Inclusion. This was a new group. It was very interesting. I didn't get to sit through all of it. Again, I will send you a link to look at the seminar, or to look at the site and at the seminar that was presented. It was very informative. It was interesting. They have a lot of resources for persons with accessibility and disability issues. One of the issues that they brought up that I don't really recall us ever talking too much about here, but they brought it up in several of their seminars, a person with depression. According to Nova Scotia Human Rights, Canadian Human Rights, a person with depression does fall under, a person with mental health issues does fall under the criteria of persons with accessibility and disability, and thus should be accommodated. But I stopped and looked at and thought, how does our plan apply to this? Like, we all know that mental health care resources are scarce. Canada needs more of them. Yarmouth needs more of them. It's really outside of our plan. But then I got to thinking, let's bring that a little closer to home. What about the person that's in Company A? Company A has 10 people employed. One of them has depression. With the other 9 people in Company A, nowhere to send that person with depression for help. Would any of those other 9 people have mental health first aid training? And just to put you out there, should that be a requirement for anybody in the accessibility field, or a requirement for anybody in the public field? I'll just give you that to think about. June 1st, I attended a Zoom meeting with the Province Accessibility Group. This was in conjunction with the launch of the campaign, a promotional campaign that says access includes everyone in everyday life. Now, they were going to launch ads on the TV, in the newspaper, and stuff like that. And I personally, if anybody else has, I have not heard any of such advertising taking place. I don't know if anybody else heard of one this week, but it was supposed to take place this week on television, newspapers, and various other media, but I haven't seen anything. We thought about jumping on the bandwagon as the town and maybe using that to promote our plan and promote or I won't say promote, maybe educate the public that our accessibility plan is out there. Because as I was talking to people this week, both at the Peach Seminar and different people around town, there continues to be a lack of understanding of what we are doing, why we are doing it, a lack of knowledge that there is a plan out there and what it's about, and how it applies not only to the sidewalks and the town hall, but to the business, the coffee shops, the malls, etc., as well as the people in the town that don't understand that we can't just snap our fingers and make things happen or stomp our feet and make a business comply. Like, it just seems to be, and I say all that to say this, there just seems to be a big well of misunderstanding and lack of understanding that I think maybe we need to explore, maybe not tonight, but we need to explore further and how we can fix that, how we can educate people. Naturally, with educating people, the first thing you got to do is make a loud noise and say you're there. And a lot of people don't even know, I find, don't even know that we're here. So I'm going to leave this question to you. What do you think of the idea of putting together a pamphlet? I can work with Mike on this, or anyone else for that matter. A pamphlet, some literature, maybe a display, and on CFest and perhaps exhibition, just have some people at a table saying, hey, talk to us about your understanding of accessibility in the town of Yarmouth. I'll leave that out there and maybe we can get back to it under new business, but I think it's something that we might want to consider. I know summer's always busy. I know my schedule's picking up quite hectic. And I know other people have vacation plans and I certainly wouldn't want to interrupt those. So it's something to think about. Number 4, there's an independent review of the Nova Scotia Accessibility Act. Again, I'm going to send you out a link to a survey. It's quite a bit of a long survey, but this is an Accessibility Act that is a review of the Accessibility Act of Nova Scotia, sort of to make sure that we are hitting our targets, to make sure that we're not just doing our job, but that we're effectively making change. And I'll send you a link to that. I already went through and talked to a few people on that, and I have a telephone interview with them next week, which should be interesting. Moving on June 2nd, the federal government reintroduced legislation to create a new Canadian disability benefit. The purpose of the proposed benefit is to reduce poverty, support the financial security of the working age person with disabilities. I have no idea how that's going to take shape, but I'm excited enough to say that it's about time. That at least I feel that we've been heard. At least I feel that there might be some aid coming to persons with accessibility issues. Again, I don't know how exactly that's going to take shape, and they're not giving us any details. Number 6, the Canadian Human Rights Association is conducting a survey on housing issues. This is quite extensive. I took a look at this afternoon. I will be following up on it further, and I will send you a list of my notes here that you can take a look at it as well. Basically what it is they will give you, the link goes to Canadian Human Rights Association. Their purpose is to follow up on disability and accessibility issues from a broad range of forms, particularly one in housing. They're asking people that can relate to accessibility and disability issues to fill out a 26-page survey. Oh, wow, that really blanked me out. Anyway, I'll send you the link to that. If you think this is something you want to get involved in, I would encourage you to do it. Housing is kind of out of our plan, but it's still a huge issue that people with accessibility and disabilities are experiencing. Housing shortages is an experience that everybody in Yarmouth is experiencing. And last but not least, the splash park has broken ground, and I'm excited. I may be too young to go splash. I may be too old to go splash in the park. But I look forward to taking my nieces, my nephews, probably some of my clients, and just cooling off on a hot day. And I think I'll speak with Natalie afterwards, but I think maybe on behalf of the committee that we should send a letter of congratulations and offer our, I don't know, consulting advice as they develop their park. I think that would be a really good idea. Anyway, that's all I have as far as the chair's report goes. I know it was kind of winded, but we didn't have a meeting last month, so I'm gonna put that out there. Moving on to 9B, the Accessibility Action Plan. Take it away, Nat.
Sure, everybody. Just an update. So staff met in early May, or I should say mid-May, to review the priorities that were identified in the action plan. And what will be happening over the next 6 months is we'll be doing a deep dive into those priorities. So what we'll be looking at are ones related to safety, ones related to current projects, maybe some we've even had implementation. I think a large focus will be on policy development and training. Those are things that are low hanging and that we can make a start without any significant investment that would impact budget. So I'll be giving you an update each time we meet. Our next meeting with staff is the 3rd week of June. And so I've got a recurring schedule with them for us to do the updates. Part of it is that we'll form a kind of a report card or an update that we can bring to these meetings so you know the progress that we're making. That's my report, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Natalie. The next item that I have is space audit updates by Francois.
Hey, everybody. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So for the last little while, we haven't created any new data sheets or any new audits, but what we're concentrating on, we're going to be reviewing with the property managers. For example, on the Mariners on Main, we got a meeting scheduled for the 22nd of June, where we're going to go basically step by step through the positive things, the things that need to be done for safety, and the long-term plans. And I'll make myself available to the manager there, and we'll go over what I can help them with. Also for the town hall and Killam's Wharf, we're planning on doing a review on these 2 audits also around the 21st of June. So a couple of members came up and we had conversation. I think Tracy and I talked about some of the issues about colors, how those affect accessibility. And I appreciate Tracy for sharing some good information with me. And I had a visit from Peter also, and Peter was working hard at making sure that the documentation he was filling out had the right information on it. So he kind of put me to task a little bit, and I want to say thank you, Peter, for doing that. Sometimes they use terminology in these audits that may not be, on our day-to-day vocabulary. So you made me look for the right terms. That's all I have, Mr. Chair, unless there's other questions from the group.
Okay. Anybody got questions? I know I will be reaching out to you probably later, early next week. I walked through the Mariner Center myself on the open house day, not looking at it from the building perspective, but looking at it from a program perspective. And I'll email you my
Okay.
findings. I was also wondering if we could get an update of where we're at with what we could do as a group. I know several of the members have already gone out and done such. That's great, and we thank you for that. There's still more to be done. And if we're gonna be taking a bit of a break during the summer, I have no trouble doing a few of these. And that kind of
I
thing.
can definitely reach out to you.
Okay, perfect.
I can share some
Okay,
information.
perfect.
Thank you
Yep.
very much, Mr. Chair.
You share some information with me and I'll make sure the group gets a copy.
Perfect. Will do.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Any other questions or concerns? Boy, we are a quiet bunch. Okay, thank you. Okay, discussion of attendance. I sent an email out with a very, I think, descriptive example of how attendance here needs to work. We agreed that if you cannot send an email to Sherry saying that you cannot be at the meeting for such and such a reason, that will be considered an excused absence, then you will just be considered absent. And 3 absences will bring the executive together to say, okay, do we extend her position or do we replace her? It's come to that point because almost tonight we didn't have a quorum for the meeting. We have to have 51% for a quorum. And that's 5 people, is that right, Tracy? Right, or not Tracy, sorry, Sherry, I'm looking at Sherry. Yeah, so we have to have 5 people. And we all know, I'm gonna say it, that our vice chair has not been around. And some of our members have been hit and miss. Some of them have had excuses. That's fine. I have no problem with that. Neither does anyone else as far as I'm concerned. But if you're just not showing up because you've lost interest, okay, we need to move on. And this committee needs members that are going to be active, that are going to show up for the meetings, that are going to take tasks at hand and run with them. So, Natalie, is there anything else you would like to say about attendance?
No, Mr. Chair.
Anybody else got any comments about attendance? Do you think that if you've read my email, do you think that what I'm proposing is fair and honest?
Maybe, Mr. Chair, you could just review quickly what that is. So if somebody's watching the meeting, then they'll know what you're referring to.
Basically, is that just what I've already said? If, excuse me here, if you fail to show up for 3 consecutive meetings with no excuse other than the fact that you just couldn't be bothered, if you don't, then you'll be excused from, excuse me here, I'm jumbling my words. Then the executive, Sherry, Natalie, myself, and the vice president will meet and decide whether or not we can continue your position or your absence of your position, or whether or not we need to fill that position and ask you to step down. If you're away from a meeting because, heaven forbid, you're in a car accident, you're away for 3 meetings, that's perfectly okay. It's excusable. It's understandable. What we're trying to eliminate here is people that have been absent in their position for no other reason than they just gave up and walked away. And they haven't made any attempt to reach out or contact us I understand forgetting about times. I had to check the time for this meeting twice, stuff like that. Does that make sense to everybody? Is that agreeable with everybody? Peter?
Can I ask a question? Is anybody looking at the meeting chat?
I'm not, no.
Okay. I sent a message saying Lori sent an
Yeah.
email saying she's trying to get it in but can't.
Okay, I do, okay, I've got some things here. And sometimes, you know, if it's a tech issue, I'm not so bad on that on that either. If people get hung up on tech issues, if people are just away because they're sick, we're not talking about slapping the fingers of somebody because they miss a meeting. We're talking about slapping the fingers of someone that has missed 5 or 6 meetings. And saying, okay, if you're just not working with us, so we got to replace you. Does that make sense, Peter?
Yeah, I was just trying to let somebody know that Lori's trying to get in, but I don't know if somebody needs to open the door or how this app works.
If Lori's trying to get in, Sherry, can
See her
you?
show up. Yep, and I could let her in, but she's not appearing in the waiting room. I'm gonna send her a message. Send her the
Oh.
link one more time.
I guess she's on her phone, and that's just difficult for me. Okay, then basically the policy is adapted because there was a piece of, and I don't remember the number of the legislation. Okay, but basically it follows under. Natalie, can you help me out here? We were talking about this earlier.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, I don't have that.
Yeah,
It's the
I don't have
committee, it's
me
the
either.
advisory committee policy, and under the advisory committee policy, it basically is an umbrella policy for all advisory committees.
Yeah. I can send that out again though. But basically, we don't have to vote on accepting the policy because the policy is already there. But that being said, it's now time to think about our annual nominations of chair and vice chair. We're supposed to do this yearly. We're kind of back. What am I on? 18 months or so now. So as not to cause any conflict of interest, does anybody have any concerns about holding elections tonight?
Do we have enough people for that?
Well, the only people we're missing is Jane, Lori, and Gil. Gil's position won't change.
We have our quorum, so
We do have a quorum.
Okay.
So if we're okay with holding elections, I'm gonna ask Derek if he would step in and hold the elections for 2022 for the Yarmouth Town Accessibility Committee for chair and vice chair.
Okay. I guess we would start with the chair, I'm thinking. Do we have any nominations for the chair? This is for a 1-year term?
Yes.
For a 1-year term. Is there any nominations?
For what it's worth, I will offer another year.
So we have 1 nomination from Stephen. Is there any further nominations? Any further nominations? And a third time, any further nominations? No, hearing none. Stephen, welcome back as chair. You're doing a fine job, and I think that's why
Thank you.
everybody's wanting you to stay there. So vice chair, do we have any nominations for vice chair?
I'd like to nominate Peter. It's up
Peter,
to
would
Peter
you-
to accept, but I'd like to nominate Peter.
Peter, would you be willing to accept that?
Probably, yeah.
Okay, we have one nomination for vice chair, which is Peter. Do we have any further nominations? Any further nominations? And a third time, is there any further nominations? Okay, hearing none. Peter, you're appointed as the new vice chair. Congratulations. Great team again. So that's the only two positions we need to fill, right?
Hey, that's it for now. Yep.
Okay, perfect. Thanks.
So thank you.
I just want to thank you both for putting your names forward. Much appreciated.
Careful what you say there, Tonya. You may not
No, I
appreciate
mean
it
it.
later.
It's great. Thank you.
Okay, so with that said and done, we do know that it now opens up. We are now a team of 8, and it opens up a position. I will be speaking with Natalie probably maybe later this week, early next week, about looking at filling that position. In the meantime, if you know of anybody, have them reach out to Natalie and, or I guess myself, because we talk a lot. And we can talk to them about it and how to apply and all that kind of stuff. But we now do have an empty seat. So let's give some thought over the summer as to how we're going to fill that.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, I just wanted to add something if you don't mind.
Sure can.
I think it's important for the committee to think about who's missing from the group. Like, I don't mean a person, but, you know, do you have representation from everybody that you would want to hear from? So I do have some applications that were submitted in the past. And I can certainly bring that. You might want to select a nominating committee, and your recommendation would then go to council. But I would definitely, want you guys to think about who's missing from your board that you would want to intentionally seek out interest. Thank you.
That's exactly what I was going for, Nat. Thank you so much. And Natalie, if you're still there, just correct my math here, but we can make recommendations, but the town makes the final decision, correct?
I believe so, but Councillor Lesser, is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. Moving on. Okay, where did I leave off? We're down to new business, is that correct? Yep, okay. The Hailey Road Multiple Trail Phase 4 project. I haven't had the chance to play on that trail yet, but I've seen it a few times. Anyway, can't wait to hear about it.
DeMario, are you able to present now?
Okay.
Yeah, I think I'm online here. Can you see me? Can you hear me?
Yep.
Perfect. Yeah, so essentially we're going through with an 8-foot wide multi-use Asphalt trail is essentially the same as what we did with phase 2, 2A, and 3 that you see along Hailey Road. Right now, we also have concrete islands, and they will have tactile plates on those as well. You'll also have marked crosswalks. So essentially, we're just doing the same thing that we were doing last construction season. I'm not sure what other items you guys are looking to hear about regarding an update, but I'm here to answer some questions, obviously.
I gotta confess, I haven't had the chance to look at the project,
I'm
particularly.
I'm gonna put it on the screen, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
This was something we heard a lot about during the campaign in that area. There's a lot of seniors living, obviously, in the new home development there, and they were struggling to get out and go for walks. And this was a request of theirs, and luckily, I guess previous council had already planned for it, but hearing very positive things about it.
Okay, well, the first two issues that come to mind, I mean, the trail, from what I'm looking at, looks great, looks very typical to what we already have. And I don't think it is even a planning issue as far as development goes, but the first thing that comes to mind is snow removal. We know that this is a big issue for any trail, for any street, crosswalk and whatnot in Yarmouth. Are there plans to keep this snow-free, especially where there are abundance, as already mentioned, abundance of seniors using this trail?
Snow removal is more of a public works function, so I can't necessarily speak to what Chad's going to do, but there's, as far as I know, there's every intent to remove snow from the trail, and the trail also has a slope so that with catch basins on the backside, so that whenever there's any sort of runoff, that water is being removed from the trail just based on gravity. But as far as I know, we've never had any issues with snow being on the trail or accumulating on the trail. It's well salted, probably. You know, I've driven past it many times in the winter months, and I've never seen a problem. I've walked it in the winter.
Okay.
Yeah, they're very well maintained. Versus sidewalks in front of houses that are property owners' responsibility. This doesn't actually fall in line with, there's no houses directly adjacent to it. So, so far what I've seen, the trails are very well kept.
And no questions, concerns, thoughts, or ideas here? Okay, I'm going to say thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Moving on, I know there was one other such thing. Derek, you had originally sent me some pictures of basically holes in sidewalks. One of those houses, I believe, Tracy can correct me, was 136 Brunswick. Is that correct? So I guess the question is that a town responsibility or a property owner responsibility?
It would be the town. That area in particular is worrisome because it's there's a Yakro home right there, and it's they're out in a lot, and I know that I think they can go to the north somewhat easy, but trying to go southward is pretty difficult. And I think it's more about like patching it and fixing it versus ripping it all up, because there is a sidewalk on the other side of the street as well. Okay. And then the other spot would be on Chestnut, in front of one of the apartments. And I'm not sure, I actually don't know the rules around that. If it's the driveway that's the problem, not the sidewalk. So I don't know. I'm not sure what. And I know it's been reported on the C-Click Fix app.
Okay, so it was reported?
Yeah,
Okay, the Public Works would be looking into it.
Yeah.
If it falls under their jurisdiction. So it's just a matter of just figuring out whether it's their jurisdiction or whether it's property owner jurisdiction if it falls into the driveway.
And I don't think it'd be too much of an issue for somebody able-bodied, but if it's somebody in a wheelchair, I think there's a pretty deep hole there to go through, especially on the one on Chestnut Street. Actually, both of them. They're not really that accessible.
Okay, Tracy, do you know have we done or excuse me, has Yakro done anything, looked at the hole or anything like that?
No, and they've not mentioned it either. So,
Okay.
yeah, that hasn't been made an issue that they've had issues getting out and around there. But they are pretty used to, moving to other areas.
Bumpy ground.
Right.
Okay. Well, thank you for reporting it. Be honest, I looked through a lot of the reports that we're getting through the See It, Fix It site. I kind of looked through that on a couple of day basis. And it's a really good application, and I encourage you, if any of you don't have it, to download it. If you see something, it's not like I guess everybody thinks, well, if I say something, I'm just being a big mouth. No, you're being a set of eyes for the town and saying, okay, this is what I saw. It's like the town works, can't be everywhere. So if we can direct them where the big work needs to be done, then we're helping them out. Okay, Sherry, you did a survey as far as meetings go. What did you learn?
So I had a small number of responses. The general consensus was people are pretty good with with whatever. A break over the summer was something that a lot of people thought was a good idea. So now that we've finished the plan and there's not kind of that same intensity and amount of work to be done in a short time, stretching out the meetings with a longer space in between was something that was suggested. So yeah, and as far as day of the week and time, everybody seemed to be there was no kind of hard and fast ideas from everyone.
So I'm going to put this out there. Does anybody oppose does anyone oppose of us not meeting again until September, October? Okay, all in favor of it? Tanya, you still there? Nope.
I am, yeah. And Sherry, I should apologize that I didn't answer that, but I'm having like major email issues and calendar issues. And until I go into the campus and get all that fixed, I won't be able to. So I did kind of see it, and I can't get my authenticator to work. So yeah, that's no problem with me. I did type in the chat earlier, but it didn't load up because I'm again having issues. So what I was trying to put in the chat when Stephen was mentioning the raising of awareness, hopefully the news information that you were speaking of that was supposed to start on June the 1st would help with that. But also events like job fairs and other major Yarmouth events that we have, I'm certainly not opposed to being present at any of those and sitting at a table and perhaps working with someone on the committee towards creating a pamphlet of some kind. I think that's a great idea.
Okay. Thank you, Tanya. I think that is a great idea. Okay, so I am going to ask, I do think we need to do some more promotion here. I'm just a little hesitant to carry on too much without Mike here tonight. Do we think it's a good idea to perhaps set up a table at Seafest and perhaps the exhibition? These are just two events off the top of my head, and promote what we're about. How does everybody feel about that?
There's also the switch events that I think they're planning, I think a couple this summer, and those bring a lot of people out. And the car show, like there's some things that are downtown that we may be able to get into as well.
Yeah, those are two very well-attended events.
Yeah, Steve has
Myself,
stuff going
Tanya,
around all over the
and I
place.
know
We might
Lori
have trouble getting
volunteered.
the table somewhere.
Okay. So we all think it's a great idea. Would you all be willing to do an hour or two here and there if we set a table up at a couple of events? Provided, naturally that you're not on vacation and have family responsibilities. I would never pull anybody away from that. But could you find an hour or two, say this summer, to talk to some people?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Okay, then I'll work with Tanya, and I think Lori also expressed an interest to me about putting together, and Mike, when he gets back in the office, about putting together a pamphlet and seeing about getting it printed or whatnot. And then we'll look at a table display. In the meantime, those that I've already talked to, think about what are the three major primary issues that we need to communicate. Peter and Tanya and Lori can think about that, and I've already thought about it. Interesting. I will just share one thing. I was speaking with individuals at Camp Peniel tonight, and I will be going out to speak to Camp Peniel. Don't laugh at me, Sherry. I will be going out again to speak to Camp Peniel with regards to working with people with working with children and teens with accessibility issues during their council training program. This is something I'm very passionate about. That's why I joined the committee. That's why I've been with YACO for 22 years. I'm passionate about people with accessibility issues. Not just because of my own health issues, but people that I've worked with and experienced and whatnot. So I will be reaching out and working with Camp. And I'm also gonna talk to Frank Grant and see if maybe I can get in and talk to his summer counselors and stuff like that. Anybody else got anything to add? Because we are at the end and it's only 7 o'clock. Wow.
Stephen, when you're talking to Frank Grant, I can bring it up with him as well, but there were Moby mats purchased for Port Maitland Beach to allow wheelchairs to get on the beach. And I believe the tides were a little bit too forceful. So I think there were plans to maybe move that to a different location, Allenwood or something. And just wondering, I mean, I can ask him as well. I'm just wondering if there's any update of, it'd be a shame that they're not being used, because there'd be people that would definitely use them. It'd be nice if they could get them at Port Maitland Beach, but be nice to get them anywhere at this point.
Okay, yeah, I'll definitely look into that. No problem.
That would be great information to know. If you could maybe send that out to everyone once you have some more information, that would be great.
Anyone else? Any other thoughts?
Stephen, should we mention that other little committee that we're on? Or wait for another day?
Peter, I've thought about that, and I think it's that the committee will certainly do a lot of good from their own perspective. And we're talking about Ryan and his committee, and I have two concerns going into this. Is when I go into any meeting or join any group, is I want to make sure that their scope is broad enough to include a range of accessibility issues. I know that mobility issues account for 50% of accessibility issues across Canada. But I feel that it's my job as chair to make sure that 100% or as many of the accessibility issues that we deal with are covered. And I'm not completely sure Ryan and his mom are headed in that direction. Also, they're not an official group. They're not a registered group. They're just a group that hang out on Facebook. They're not
That they're
registered.
working on the official stuff.
No. And the official stuff doesn't really matter because they have a voice. And they're certainly using it, and I think it's great. I just am not sure how much as a committee we can get behind them. If they bring up any concerns, they're more than welcome to, we have a public input page. They're more than welcome to speak to that anytime. When we were at the Peach seminar, I handed out my business card to many, many, many people and asked them to please be in contact. We want to hear from you. Nobody emailed me back. So.
Okay.
Does that, I know that doesn't really answer your question, but it's.
Now, for those that are unaware, they have what they're calling ADFIA, basically Advocates for Equitable Accessibility, and they're trying to target things that the town isn't doing anything about. My concern is they're trying to target private businesses, and that's not something we can touch either. We can deal with the town's properties and facilities, but we can't affect Joe Blow's pizza place because their bathroom isn't accessible or something like that.
Yep, you're absolutely right. They can do more in your face PR than we can. We can't necessarily approach the businesses. They can, and they can certainly, yeah, I understand your concern. But I also understand the power of media to say, okay, I like this or I don't like this, and people will read it and they'll express their opinion, and it can go either way. Media such as Facebook, Twitter, whatnot, they can be good, they can be useful, and then they can be absolute horrific nightmares.
So Natalie, if you have anybody outside of our group trying to get information like I was for how many businesses are there downtown, how many of them are accessible, that's probably a part of that other group that's asking these questions.
Yeah, well, I think as far as looking at the businesses, I don't think on a private sector such as what this group is doing, I don't necessarily think there's anything wrong with it. We're saying, hey, I had trouble getting into this coffee shop in my wheelchair. I have no problem posting that on a Facebook page. I just don't know if we can discuss it here in this group that business A doesn't have an adequate ramp.
No, but if I remember right, at some point in the past year, I had asked about going and checking all the different businesses around town and figuring out how accessible they were and rating them or color coding them. If they were really good, they got a green rating. If they were not so good, they got red or black or some other color. And I had forgotten about all of that. My apologies. I'm going to try and tackle that over the summer. I'm just not sure on how to rate. I can rate how physically accessible or inaccessible something is, but how visually or audibly or for someone with autism, I have no idea how to judge that stuff.
Well, I can tell you how to deal with autism. That's pretty simple, but I can get into that later. Francois, are you still in on this conversation? And from a town's building inspector environment, what can we do?
I've been listening to the conversation, Peter, and in my honest opinion, I think it would serve the public at large if we were to find good points and publicize those. I think that, and again, this is just, you're asking for my opinion. I feel that a lot of people might have been pushed down with the last couple of years we've been going through, and I understand there's a lot of people going through different personal challenges, and I think what I've seen that tends to give better result is to find a person, an individual or a company that may do things a little bit better, and to celebrate their victories and to try to share that socially in the media to hopefully get other leaders and other business owners to catch on. The reality of an audit is that it's time consuming, it's expensive, and for a business owner to want to do that, they need to understand the added value for them to do that. And I think, Mr. Chairman, when you suggested that we as a group, and I mean, you know, that the volunteers that are involved here, to introduce themselves to the population and say, hey, we're out here, I think that is a huge step in the right direction to make ourselves visible. And then from there, the word will start spreading out. I think that would be something to focus on, to make sure that the population knows what can and cannot be done within reason. Mr. Chair, does that answer your question a little bit? And Peter, does that?
Yes, it does. Peter?
Yeah, at some point I was asking town, what percentage of the population identifies as someone with a disability. And if these businesses were to improve their facilities, it could increase their business by whatever percent possibly because of the amount of people with disabilities. I wasn't sure if that was a good way to go or not, but
there's other people. I can't give you an answer, Peter. I apologize for that, but I know that there's data that's being collected by organizations at the provincial level that might be able to help you answer those questions. Would that be something, Tracy, that YACRO would have connections to?
Provincially?
Or locally, regionally? I mean, I know the side, I know my side, my facet of the audit and the research and the evaluation process. I'm comfortable with that. But as far as agencies that would be collecting information to help Peter in what he's doing to determine, I like the idea where he's going with this, because the population needs to know who's making an effort to be accessible.
Yeah. We wouldn't have that, we wouldn't have collected that data in the area.
Okay.
The only place I can think of would be Stats Canada,
Mhm.
in particularly provincial Nova Scotia stats. Look at Yarmouth stats and look at the population base, and then look at, we already know that through the Nova Scotia Department of Accessibilities and Justice have determined back in 2007, have determined that 30%, and that's kind of that's rounding off, but that 30% of the population have accessibility issues. So if you take the population rate times 30%, then you should have your number of people. Now that probably doesn't include seniors who identify as being seniors and not necessarily people with accessibility issues. But that should give you something.
Someone had told me to chat with Clyde DeViller. I don't know what his title is, but he can give me some stats, possibly.
I can certainly work at giving you some stats, definitely. As for teaching you how to understand how somebody with hearing loss or autism or somebody like that will look at a building, well, autism is pretty simple. Just go to the back of the building, sit down, close your eyes for 30 seconds and listen and feel. And whatever you listen and feel and experience through all your other sensories is what they're feeling 10 times over. That's basic autism 101. So colors are brighter, noises are louder. The sunshine is really bright, and the tag in the back of your shirt's driving you crazy because it's all about sensory issues with them. Hearing loss, well, you've seen me enough with hearing loss. If you come into the meeting, you're going, I'm not gonna hear you. Naturally, with vision loss, we don't have anybody here with vision loss, but we know that we wouldn't be able to see, if they come into a meeting like this, they wouldn't be able to see everybody's pretty face. So
So I was part of a library committee that dealt with the different accessibility issues, and their main concern was if you go into a restaurant and they don't have braille, or their menus are so tiny that even with good eyes you have trouble reading them.
But we've
That would
already
be my biggest
identified that
comment.
braille and text size is an issue in most of our resources.
One thing that some restaurants are doing now is setting up a QR code that takes you right to the menu. So somebody could scan the code and have their reader
Device.
read what's on the menu, or they could zoom in as much as needed, or that sort of thing. So that's kind of cool. Hopefully that'll happen more places soon.
But Sherry brings up another good point, is there's a lot of technology out there for people with sensory loss, be it hearing, be it sight, be it mobility issues that we don't know about. And problem with technology, if you don't know about it, you don't know how to use it, you don't know where to get it, you don't know how it works. And until Sherry told me about this app, I would have known nothing about how to go in and scan a menu. I'm going to use one of my experiences with the Echo as a prime example. I went in during COVID, and the office provided us with screening, and I went in there and saw the office member, and she told me to take my cell phone and scan a QCR code. I had no idea what to do. So they taught me, that was fine. And the results of the test were sent back to my cell phone through the QCR code. But I had no idea how to use this. There's a lot of technology that we don't know about, and the technology that is out there that we do have, we're slowly learning how to use. And I consider myself a bit of a tech geek.
I think part of the awareness for businesses is realizing the opportunity that they have by doing this for people. One thing that I'm aware of because of my mother is that if you're in a wheelchair, not a scooter, but an electric wheelchair, for example, or a push wheelchair, and you go to a grocery store, there's not an easy way to go around the grocery store and collect groceries because there's no carts that really work with those. But there must be something on the market that would allow some of those stores to buy one or two, and then those stores may get those people's business. They might get family members' business. It's the same. I always liken it to the environment. When everybody's talking about climate change and how are we going to fix this, the businesses that looked at it in a proactive way and said this is a huge opportunity for us by going green have done really well. There's some growing pains, like getting rid of shopping bags didn't go over well at first, but now I would be annoyed if I went into a store and they had shopping bags because it's not the norm anymore. So I think there's some really good opportunities if we can help educate business owners around what those opportunities are and how they could profit off some of those.
Totally agree. And that's where we come in to educating the public, businesses, whatnot, that, hey, we're here to talk to you. We're here to help. Any other concerns, questions, or ideas?
If I can ask Francois, when you do your audit of the Mariners on Main, if you want someone in a wheelchair to come with you and give some suggestions, give me a shout. The same applies, I find, to the town hall. Trying to get around there in the wheelchair, you guys might not see a problem, but I've seen a few. If you want some feedback on what needs fixing, give me a shout. I can offer a few suggestions.
Peter. So just to let you know, those audits have basically been completed, but I'll keep you in mind for the next one. I think it's either going to be the police station or Public Works that we're going to be doing. It's probably going to begin in the fall once we've reviewed the audits that have been completed so far. But thank you very much. I'll keep you in mind. I'll definitely reach out.
I know you'd mentioned something coming up at the Mariners on Main. That was my,
Right.
if you wanted someone to come with, give me a shout.
Perfect. Will do. What I was talking about there for the 22nd of June is we're meeting, the property manager has asked me to come by to explain some of the finer points of the audit that's been completed. And it's just to help them understand what the audit means. And yeah, so we weren't really looking to continue our compile more data. That audit is done, but there's more work. Definitely, if you're volunteering, I'll reach out and I'll get you to pony up for sure.
Yeah.
Thank you, Peter.
Yeah.
Anyone else?
I just want to echo what Tanya said before. This is a committee I'm passionate about, so I'm on it, but I'm also an elected councillor. So it's, we join committees. This is one I was really interested in joining, but outside of Gil and I, everybody else that's part of the committee are volunteers, and it's talked about. Council recognizes how good of a group this is, and it's kind of it's often been said, if you've popped into one of the meetings, because we've had councillors pop in, they all talk about how, if you want to see how a committee does things and gets things done, to stop them to one of our committees. So what Tanya said about thank you guys for stepping up as chairs, but thank you everyone for your volunteer work on this. It's paychecks aren't the best, but the rewards are great.
Well, personally, I can say as chair now, and I expect 100% increase from what I got last year. Okay, any other questions or concerns? Right, Tanya. Okay, then it is now 7:16. I'm going to ask Tracy to not, or sorry, I'm going to ask Sherry to not set the next meeting. We will email you as to whether we're going to meet in September or October. Everybody enjoy your summer. If you have any questions, concerns, thoughts, or ideas, please don't hesitate to reach out. Just because we're not meeting doesn't mean the work stops. The work is ongoing. And I'm looking forward to some of the things we're going to do this summer. And I will certainly be reaching out by email, probably quite frequently, just to bring you updates on things that are happening with regards to this committee, and maybe some needs for volunteer times to tend tables or whatnot. But that's it. You all have a great summer. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great summer.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good one.
Thanks, everybody.